All right, guys. Thanks for joining us this morning. My name is Brian Kroll. I work at a company called Adtaxi. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Accounts. I've been with Adtaxi since 2011, and I currently live out here in the San Francisco Bay Area with my wife and my son. This is the agenda of what we're going to run through today. It's a pretty salient topic, we think at least, but in our industry, there's a lot of stuff that's changing right now. So the privacy landscape is changing almost, it seems like daily. We're going to talk about why data privacy is good for the industry and also for your business. There's some very big implications for some of the new requirements that are coming out as a result of Apple iOS 14 in particular for some of the more popular advertising platforms. We'll run through those. Then we're going to spend some time talking about some actionable steps you can take back today or tomorrow to your business so you can start preparing for these changes. And then we'll kind of wrap it up in the summary there. But without further ado, so I've been doing digital advertising for a long time, since early, mid 2000s. And, it's always been, I think, one of the most effective media sources because you're able to put exactly the right ad in front of the right person at the right time based on data. And I know that, kind of this timeline, I think, just kind of shows a little bit about like where we've come and how things have started changing. Back in 2008, Chrome launched incognito as a browser so you could search privately. I know publishers in the industry started freaking out when ad blocking extensions first started popping up in 2009. Fast forward several years, you have GDPR going into effect in 2018. Safari announced their intelligent tracking prevention in 2018. And then Google announced that Chrome is going to have some different privacy features. CCPA going into effect in California in 2020, which is a little bit more restrictive than GDPR. And then last year in June, Apple announced what they're going to do for iOS 14 at the Worldwide Developers Conference, which sort of fast forward everything to Google talking about how Chrome's going to have a cookieless feature coming up soon, right? So nothing's really changing. Everything's changing. It's just the landscape. It's here to stay. But as an industry, it's something that we're all sort of forced to reckon with when we've gone through times of being able to have basically limitless data in which to target and serve ads and get incredible return on ad spend, to something where it's just going to be a little bit more challenging. And we're going to talk through today what these changes mean, right? So what do these changes mean for consumers? What do they mean for businesses? And I think most importantly for all of us on this summit here, what do these changes mean for marketers? And what's interesting, I think, in the reason for some of these changes, we're kind of seeing a little bit of a whiplash because we don't think that the value exchange of the internet has been explained all that well to consumers, right? There's that value exchange where you have publishers who are offering up free content, and then you have consumers who want that free content, don't really realize that content is paid for by advertising. And oftentimes the more data that is used to target the ads, especially in programmatic auctions, the more revenue that website can collect, the more the more different data markers that somebody has to target, as opposed to just geography or time of day or something like that, the more valuable that impression is, and the more haven't really done a really good job as an industry of explaining that to consumers. So this is a quote like from Steve Jobs, where privacy means people know what they're signing up for in plain language and repeatedly. And I believe people are smart. Some people want to share more than other people do. Just ask them, right? Steve Jobs, great quote. And I think it's true. So we think at Adtaxi that privacy is good business. We think that customers are, at the end of the day, they're going to trust companies with solid privacy and security as a priority. All of our life is online now, right? So, I mean, especially this past 12 months, lots of information exchanged. Nobody wants to have a website be hacked and have all their information out there. So I think that, when people know that you are taking the right steps to ensure their privacy and their security, they're going to be more likely to transact. And website visitors can be more likely to share information when that privacy is evident to them. And I think that choice and preference in this are really just critical, right? You should focus on how to engage your customers to let them know that things are safe and secure with their data, and also give them choices of like what to share. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. So what kind of precipitated a lot of this discussion recently are some of the changes that are happening to Apple's operating system for their mobile phones. So basically iOS. So it's for their phones or tablets, etc. It's also going to be happening to Apple TV OS. And it's just something that there's changes that they announced in 2014 that we'll jump into. The three sort of core biggest changes, aside from what they would talk about for like the user feature and benefits that you'll get with your iPhone, like being able to, if you have an Apple Watch, like being able to have like mask recognition for face, for unlocking the phone with using your face, are these three sort of core components, right? So the first one is called app data disclosure. The second one is what they call an app tracking transparency framework. And the third is what they're calling privacy-centric measurement, excuse me. We're going to jump into these here in a few minutes to jump to, or next actually, to talk about what these things all mean. So app data disclosure, this is something that went live in iOS 14.3. Currently, for anybody who's got an iPhone, we're in the 14.4 right now. But this went live earlier this year. And basically what it does is it provides sort of like a privacy menu in the App Store, where as you're looking at all of your apps, you can kind of see all of the different data collection practices on that app's product page. So there are the privacy labels. It's fascinating, actually, if you're an iPhone user, to kind of scroll through and see what it is that apps are tracking. Because if you look at some apps, if you scroll through, there's just a laundry list of things, and you're kind of thinking to yourself, why on earth would this app need to have all of this access to this information? That's part of the reason why Apple is doing this, is they just want to give consumers more control to see sort of what's there. This is currently live. It's been out since, I think, late January or something like that, when they launched iOS 14.3. The next piece is something that is not live yet, but if you're a marketer on Facebook, or if you've been reading the trades, there's been quite a bit of hullabaloo between Facebook and Apple on this, with op-eds and everything. But essentially, with the rollout of what is widely believed to be iOS 14.5, and again, this is all sort of changing. We thought this was going to be 14.4, and then 14.4 came out. It was more of a security enhancement. But this is already something that can be live right now. And essentially what it is it's a toggle where apps are going to be required to have consumers opt in to tracking on those apps. So it'll be mandated for anything in the App Store that once 14.5 hits, you're going to have to ask someone for permission to track you across apps for those, if you're an app publisher. And this is what they're calling app tracking transparency. There'll be a little toggle, and you'll kind of see over here on the right side. I think we took this from Facebook's data, but like permission to track you across apps and websites owned by other companies, allow tracking, ask app not to track. There's a couple of different things that can be done in this, in terms of what's called the modal or the prompt right there, where you'll get some capability to change it and talk about why you should allow in for personalized ads or something like that. But this isn't something that's out yet, but it'll be coming very soon. Apple has said that this will be coming out sometime in early spring of this year, which technically, if you're going by the book, would have been last week. But it's not out yet. We're expecting this to be coming out sometime before the end of April, but could be literally any day. The next thing that is going to be happening is Apple is sort of going with what they're calling private click measurement. And what that's doing is that if somebody chooses to opt out of tracking on an app, what Apple is saying is that apps need to respect that privacy, and they're limiting how advertising conversions can be tracked through this. And the big changes that you kind of see in this box right here are you're going to be limited to click tracking only. And this is for if you're served up an ad in-app, and that can be any app. It could be Facebook's app, you could be in the NBA's app, you could be, doesn't matter, Twitter, any of the large platforms. You're going to be limited for people who opt out to only tracking the clicks that are coming through from those ads. They're also putting into play, Apple is mandating what's called a user agent, is essentially your browser. So if I'm on my iPhone and I am in an app, to go to a website in the app, inside that app, it basically pulls up a version of Safari, which is called the user agent. They're mandating that user agent is going to delay the events after that click to being sent back to the server at least 24 hours, but up to 72 hours. So that's going to be a big change. You'll still be able to go straight through to the website. If I click on an ad, it's just that the server information for that ad from that tracking tag is only going to send back anything related to the click. It's a very small amount of data that will be passed back, and it has to wait 24 to 72 hours before that is coming through. So that's kind of a big change, especially not being able to track anything from a post-view standpoint, and then just having that sort of time delay. The other thing that's going to be changing is that if you are running app install campaigns or something for in-app measurement, you're going to have to download or install what's called SKAdNetwork from Apple. And that's something where it's going to streamline the amount of data that's sent back there from the app side of things as well. But essentially, it's just making it sure that that if somebody chooses to be opt out from the tracking, that it's basically enforcing that. And this is also something that is not yet enforced by Apple. But as soon as 14.5 rolls out with that modal for the app tracking transparency, this will be included. And this is going to potentially make quite a few changes, ripple effects across the industry, because there's quite a bit of data that may not be shared back from advertising campaigns in terms of what we'd see normally from our metrics. So what does that mean across different platforms? So at Adtaxi, we work with multiple different DSPs and platforms, and we wanted to kind of showcase, after talking with all of them, trying to understand what the potential implications are going to be across this, kind of put together this a matrix for you. But this is from AdRoll. They just put out a blog post not too long ago in February, but some interesting stats here. According to their blog post, about 70% of Apple users are currently sharing data with app publishers, and AdRoll is estimating that between 10 and 15% will share data when those updates go live. So if you think about that, that may be just a absolutely massive amount of signal loss if you are if you're a marketer. Who knows exactly what it's going to be? Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, it depends on how, I think, creative that folks are with the language in their prompts. You're not allowed to do any sort of gating so that you limit the functionality of the app if somebody opts out. But it would just be, I think, how do we convince people that you're still going to see ads, just now you're going to see more personalized ads. That'll make a big difference on what people want to do. But either way, it's going to be fine. It's going to have universal impact, though. And what this is going to do for people who opt out, if you have pixel-based audiences, meaning that it's going to be browser-based audience, there are going to be some limitations with that. You should also expect to see, if there are that many people opting out, some campaign volume fluctuations. Let's say that you're doing like a remarketing campaign, and all of a sudden, if half of the users in the ecosystem are iOS users, probably not quite that many, but depends on your app and your brand, you may all of a sudden have fewer people you're able to remarket to, because all of a sudden there's a sudden signal loss there. There is going to be, because of the private click measurement, maximum of 7 days that you'll be able to look back from that click. This is an Apple change. The user agent is only allowed to hold that click data for 7 days. And it's up to if somebody has to log basically back into that app for that data to be sent, it has to relaunch the browser after the first time of that event. So that'll be a change. And then also potentially, because of having to hold the signal for the click before it sends back to the ad server, there could be a delay of up to 3 days in reporting for people who opt out. So this could have some pretty interesting impacts across all the different platforms. We tried to take a pretty good stab here at showing what we think the impact is going to be based on talking to these platforms. And essentially, you can go through and look. Definitely worth searching to your platforms and reading what they think the impact is going to be. But basically, we think that for most programmatic or real-time bidding, which would include display, native, video, any kind of streaming audio, video, pre-roll, or any kind of connected TV, it should be a fairly low impact unless you are specifically targeting in-app, in which case it'll be a much higher impact. But because this is generally across the open web, and we've already had intelligent tracking prevention out there already on Safari, and people can go incognito if they want. We think it's probably going to be a fairly low impact, both from a targeting standpoint and from an attribution reporting potential impact standpoint too. Same thing for Google, search shopping, YouTube through that platform, fairly low impact. Bing, formerly known as Bing, the artist formerly known as Bing, Microsoft Ads, same thing, fairly low impact there. Snapchat, LinkedIn, and Twitter are saying potentially a low to moderate impact, I think taking a little bit of a wait and see approach there. But the big one is going to be anybody who advertises on Facebook, because Facebook is predicting themselves that there's going to be some pretty significant impact, not only to what we can do from a targeting perspective, but also from an attribution and reporting perspective. And so as such, Facebook is been putting on a series of webinars talking about all the changes that are going to have to be made. So that's what we're going to get into next, some steps for your business to prepare. The immediate actions are going to be anybody who relies very heavily, or at least moderately heavily, on Facebook marketing, right? We also really advise people to gain mastery of your analytics. You want to prepare for any changes in attribution or performance and really focus on your first party data. That is going to be paramount going forward. We'll talk about that in a little bit too. And then it's really about use this potentially as an opportunity to diversify your marketing mix. So with Facebook, they've got what they are calling some highly recommended actions. They are basically saying, and through a series of blog posts, if you're a marketer, you're probably getting these emails from them. If you're in the ad accounts and if you're setting up ad campaigns, you're seeing notifications everywhere. But basically, there are three sort of core steps that they want you to take as a result of this to have the least amount of disruption. So the first off is they're highly recommending that every advertiser on Facebook verify your domain, which basically is similar to if you've ever done a domain verification for Google. You have to basically log into Business Manager, you have to set up your domain, and then they give you a configuration code that you would either add as like a meta tag or through your server, basically so that Facebook can then crawl the site and make sure that whoever has access to the domain actually has the code on the site. It's your legit domain. It's a good thing to do even if you're not a Facebook marketer, because it basically allows who can post on your to your page on your site. The next part would be if the pixel that is being used in the ad account has to be shared with the business manager that owns the verified domain so that you can properly configure events. So that is a little tricky. If you are doing everything on your own, you've got your own Facebook account, you've got your own pixel, it's going to be owned by your same business manager anyway. But if you work with an agency or outside third party to help you manage your Facebook ads, that's something that will have to be done, because as a result of what Apple has done, Facebook is changing the amount of data that can be used for conversion-based campaigns. And they're basically saying that you are now limited to the Facebook pixel used to have basically limitless combinations of what you could track for events. But Facebook is now saying that you're only going to get to have 8 events, and only the top event that you choose, if you rank, is going to have any sort of reporting through what Facebook is doing for what they're calling aggregated event measurement to track conversion. So if you're an e-commerce company and you are all about the purchase, you want to make sure that you rank your events and that you put the purchase event as the top event. This is a little technical here, so there's a lot of information here. More than happy to talk in the Q&A afterwards about possible ramifications, but I want to make sure I get through all the rest of the content. But these are some of the 3 sort of initial things that you'll want to do. If you don't do these things and you are doing any sort of optimizing to an event like a purchase campaign, if your events are not showing up in aggregated event measurement, Facebook has said that they will pause any ads or any ad sets when this change happens, they'll basically pause them until you're able to configure events and optimize only for those web conversion events or in-app conversion events that are ranked in their aggregated event measurement. So could be a pretty massive change, and it'll be a same day breaking change. What they've said that within 24 hours of iOS 14.5 going live, that Facebook's going to be making all of this happen. That's what they're saying. We'll see what happens when it actually does drop, but that's the biggest sort of implications for anybody who's a Facebook marketer. So how do you deal with this, right? There are some things that we're advising our clients to do and helping our clients do, which is first and foremost, let's start getting a mastery of our analytics. Let's take a triage mentality. Let's figure out, okay, where, if we look at like looking at, say, Google Analytics, where are most of my conversions that are coming in from like an iOS device, and where might I see the most disruption there, right? So look at all that data, go back as far as you can. Obviously, the last year has been a complete anomaly in terms of data for everybody, so you want to kind of normalize that as best you can. But we advise you to take a look at sort of your source data across all facets of Google Analytics, look at different geographies, device types, operating systems, whatever you can, and try and create benchmarks so that if you're going to encounter any signal loss on the ad platform side, you can at least cross-reference historical data to determine where or where not there may be some moves. Because remember, if somebody clicks on one of those ads, even if they've opted out, you're still going to get to the website. You're still going to be able to purchase. It's just that the ad platform won't have the data that you would have expected it to see normally. So it'll still show up in Google Analytics. You'll still see a sale. It just may be attributed somewhere else. And so if all of a sudden you see a big surge in, say, like direct or none or something like that, possibly a boost in organic traffic, we're not really sure exactly how this is going to show up in Google Analytics, but something to be prepared for, so that you're ready and you have an idea to say, we were spending this much on Facebook now, we're still seeing this much come in. It just looks a little bit different, be a little bit wonky for a little bit, but that's where I would say to start, is you really get a mastery of your analytics and your trends. The next thing you want to do is you're going to need to prepare to manage expectations in the face of all of these changes, right? If you're reporting up to someone and you are a marketer and your boss has been, hey, I've been consistently getting a 4x return, Brian, all of a sudden it's now 2. What happened? What went crazy? Should highly recommend that you start prepping people that there will be changes in reported attribution, mainly because of what Facebook's doing, especially if you had been using a 28-day click or something like that. That is still historically there, but that's going to be going away as well, and it's just going to be 7 days. So I would say be prepared, have those conversations. Definitely in terms of reported conversions and what's happening there, you're going to monitor that. And I would say also think about the best way to possibly optimize those events, especially if you have like a longer purchase cycle, right? So instead of looking at macro goals, you might start looking at like, what are some micro goals that we could use to replace, or steps in the funnel. So we can say, as long as we've got this many people coming in here, we'll get this many people coming to this step, and so on and so forth. So those are some things that we highly recommend to do to prepare for those changes. Another thing to do, very much recommend focusing on the first party data, right? So this is your data that you own as a company. Think of this as your customers, right? They're the most valuable asset that you have. And start to think about and talk about in your organization, what are some things that we can do to capture more of this and to better utilize this valuable customer data? So especially when we look at cookieless future and what happens with Chrome, that first party data is going to be huge. So think about things like, could we do more with potentially a loyalty program if we even have one? Should we investigate setting one up? Should we incentivize customers to create an account instead of checking out as a guest in order to get better deals? Should we think of things where we're going to, put some content up that would be very valuable, where if somebody shares an email address or something like that, that they'll get better content? Think about how possibly an enhanced customer experience could look. Basically, you want to have what you want to give, especially if you are an app publisher, every incentive you can to let people enable tracking so that they can have potentially the best experience in terms of personalized ads and everything, so that you're going to get the best amount of data back. And then how to use these insights, definitely the offline to online conversion. Most of that data is centered around generally like an email address is kind of the hook. So if you can have those email addresses both within Facebook or within any of the other platforms, use that data to build lookalike audiences, right? Figure out your lifetime value. If you haven't already done this, figure out who are your best customers and then build lookalike audiences off of those customers. Use it for cross-sell, upsell, etc. Segmentation is going to be huge. And think about, from depending on the type of business you are, how you can think about getting people to sort of cross-sell, upsell, repurchase, and think about that time frame. I think that we're going to see a big explosion in the use of first-party data coming soon here. And it's always been great to do, but I think it's going to be even more critical to master that going forward. And so, I would also say, think about your marketing mix, right? If you are 95% social Facebook advertising and you just, hadn't heard of any of these changes right now, you might be freaking out a little bit. That's not the point of this. We're just trying to tell you all exactly what's out there. But highly consider thinking about the change of where this is all going. I think as an industry, we've been moving to the bottom of the funnel over the last few years. All of the different platforms have their best algorithms to find exactly the right person, exactly the right time. It's great for them because those auctions end up getting higher CPMs, but it's something that's going to be changing. So I think we're going to see a move up the funnel. I personally still love display advertising. It's got massive scale, very affordable, very cost effective, and it's also not going to be impacted, at least with the DSP we use, as much as anything else. Same thing for native. Same thing for streaming audio, pre-roll, connected TV, all of these things. Connected TV out of all of these actually is basically cookieless right now. It uses a third-party identifier generally around an email address. So that should be one of the least disrupted. And then the other thing I would say too is, get really creative with how you are messaging and engaging with users. So focus on that customer experience. Think about the quality content. Yeah, I always used to say that, if you're thinking about an ad buy or what you wanted to do in terms of a media plan, you always want to answer, who do you want to reach? What do you want to tell those people? And what do you want those people to do? If you have a little bit more challenge on, dialing in exactly who you want to reach, and you have a little bit more challenge on the attribution side of measuring exactly what's happening from that, the middle part is key, right? So I think we're going to see a little bit of a return to the creatives, just doing what they do to really help influence where somebody chooses to purchase. And again, loyalty programs, anything you can do there to capture first party data is huge. So other thing I would say too is, just stay informed, right? Everything is coming fast, and it's going to be pretty numerous. There's going to be new privacy measures that are continuing to arise. There was some national legislation that was, I believe, introduced not too long ago. We're seeing a lot of interest now around a unified ID potentially across the open web. That's still in process. And I think, ad platforms are all going to be reacting to this. I don't think anybody knows exactly how this is going to drop. So get ready to expect change. But it is how it's happening, and we're all going to have to deal with it, and we're going to be fine. It's going to be a moving target, but that's fine. That's all good. But agility is absolutely key here. So next steps in closing here. So iOS 14, it's basically putting privacy controls in the hands of the user, right? It's going to be disruptive in the short term. And the biggest thing I would say is, really get mastery over your analytics, have those conversations now about, what could be changing when you're having those reporting calls. And then ultimately, do whatever you can. If you are a Facebook marketer, follow along with what they're recommending to do, because they've got, they know the platform, they built it. Follow their steps to get the best out of your customer experience and your performance from your ad campaigns. So I think I got that exactly on time. But if you want to learn more about us at Adtaxi, you can check us out at adtaxi.com and find us out at more events at those links right there. But thank you all so much for sharing your morning or afternoon with me, depending on where you are. And
Brian, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you for doing that. We got a couple of minutes here. We're going to try to get through some questions. And if we don't get to your question, or if you have any additional questions, Brian, am I correct? You'll be over in the post-session chat room for stage one?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. A couple things. Devin's asking, and a couple people were also seconding it about, do you have any information like documents or links or anything about the top event being counted as a conversion after the iOS changes? They've done a lot of work on the other end of that, upending some of their Facebook sourcing and literature, and they haven't heard this before. Is there anything that you might be able to drop into the Q&A, like a link or something, that they can get that information?
Yes, I will find that. We have a link on our website as well too, where we've done, I think, a pretty good job of explaining everything that's out there. But it's definitely all over. If you search for Facebook for aggregated event measurements, you'll be able to find it on their site. Basically, if somebody clicks through, only that top event will be counted for people who opt out. So it's only for people who opt out. That top event will be counted through their aggregated event measurement platform. Everything else will still be tracked for people who don't opt out.
Brian, thank you so much. And thanks everybody for being here. And we'll see everybody in one of the stages soon.
Thanks for having me, guys. Stay safe out there.